Chapter 11, Poor Lucretia. Now, on Saturday night, the church mice were all back in residence once again. Most had returned to their old nests, finding them undisturbed inside the walls. The glue boards had been carefully explained to them by Hildegard during her departure talk, and the mice chuckled each time they skirted one. 7 of hearts under the kitchen sink. Jack of clubs in the sexton's closet. Harvey, mischievous, had left some droppings on that one. There was even a 5 of spades under the organ console, very close to Hildegard's sleeping nest. She pushed it aside with a laugh. Oh, sometimes the great X would return, she knew, summoned again by Father Murphy, who would eventually miss his solitaire cards, and by the sexton, who would be mystified as he found them here and there throughout the church. The exterminator page of the telephone book, though, had been carefully eaten. Jeremiah had done it all alone, a big job, but he felt that he needed to atone for not being able to find the 52nd glue board. His 8 of spades was still in the bushes by the church steps. What now? For it had been drizzling for 24 hours. Hildegard busied herself throughout the night, reminding the mice that tomorrow was the feast of St. Francis, the celebration that ordinarily they watched through the windows and peepholes. But the windy rain had increased during the night, and as the first light came, she made the rounds again, warning them all. It will be indoors, she said briskly, trying not to alarm them too much. It had been some years since it had rained on the day of the blessing of the animals. Most of the mice were too young to know anything but the outdoor ceremony in its amusing confusion. Ignatius was old enough, but he had been living at the university library then, so even he, with all his knowledge, was unaware of the impending danger. Stay hidden, she admonished them over and over, deeply hidden. I want to watch, Harvey whined. Why can't we watch? There will be cats, many cats. I'm not scared of cats. I could bite cats. Harvey bared his big crooked front teeth. Hildegard shook him. Listen to me. Cats are our worst enemy. You must fear cats, and you must watch only from the most hidden and inaccessible places. Inside an air vent, top of an organ pipe, if you can climb up there, they're slippery. In a cushion? I could be in a cushion, Harvey suggested. No! Cats have terrible claws. They could rip a cushion, and you apart in seconds. Oh, darn, Harvey said, and went off sulking. Hildegard turned back to the assembled, nervous mice. Find your hiding places now, she said, because she assessed the light through the stained glass windows. Rain made light very different, so it was hard to tell the time, and may be starting before long. Listen for the organ. When Trevor Fazoli begins to practice, you must absolutely be hidden. Hildegard watched as all of them, even Harvey, obediently scampered off to hide themselves. Oh, she hoped she could keep them safe. They were so dear to her, most of them anyway. Where's Lucretia? She asked Roderick, who was by her side. I haven't seen Lucretia this morning. He shrugged. Dunno, probably up to no good. Well, I hope she has a hiding place planned. How about you, Roderick? Where are you headed? Not sure. I was thinking about maybe under the mop in the sexton's closet. He won't be cleaning this morning. Well, he will be, but it'll be when the ceremony ends. He'll have to clean up after the animals. You know they lose control often. Disgusting. Dogs especially. Think he'll need his mop? Roderick asked. Probably, especially if that horse comes. Well, I'd better find a different place then. Where are you going, Hildegard? She hesitated. She was planning to head to the sacristy, her own special private place. She thought that she might be able to peek through the keyhole of the sacristy door and get a bit of a glimpse. Was it selfish to keep a place so private and out of bounds only for herself? Maybe it was. And Roderick was so very loyal and, yes, she had to admit, sweet. So she gave in. Come with me, Roderick. We'll go to the sacristy. We can curl up under the surplices while Father Murphy vests himself. Then, after he leaves, we'll have the room to ourselves. And I think we can figure out a way to peek at the ceremony. The sacristy? I'm honored, Hildegard. Thank you. Roderick indeed looked very grateful and affectionate. Hildegard knew, actually, that he had a bit of a crush on her. She had always thought that they were too old for that kind of foolishness. But now, with cats about to enter the church, with dangers to face, it seemed, for the first time, important to have a special friend. They could hear Trevor Fazoli arrive and mount the stairs to the organ loft. In a moment, he would start the resounding chords that always began his practice. Hildegard and Roderick, side by side, scampered hastily to the sacristy to hide themselves. But when they entered the small, quiet space, they were alarmed to hear a terrible cry. It was somewhat muffled, coming from the corner near the closet where the most important chasubles, albs, and stoles were stored. Hildegard and Roderick froze. It was clearly the cry of a mouse. A wail, a scream. Somewhere in this room a mouse, one of her mice, Hildegard realized, was suffering some kind of horrible torture. They rushed forward, pushed the bottom of the thick draperies aside, and saw the catastrophe immediately. It was Lucretia, caught by all 4 feet, and her tail, as well, adhered to the only uncarded glue board. 8 of spades, Hildegard thought. This one should have been the 8 of spades. Lucretia's face was contorted with fear and pain. Even as she shook her head, screaming, some of her whiskers were caught. One was pulled out. How awful to lose a whisker! In the background, they heard Trevor begin to play scales. Then he ran through Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, one of his favorite practice pieces. Lucretia howled. Oh, what should we do? What can we do? Roderick whimpered. He began to run in frenzied circles. Don't touch it, Hildegard commanded. She feared that in his panic he would grab at the trap and become caught himself. Be still for a moment. You're distracting me, and I need to think. And Lucretia? Be quiet, she ordered. What on earth was Lucretia doing in here anyway? This was Hildegard's private space. She did remember the remedy that Ignatius had described, but my goodness, it was almost impossible. Olive oil, she said aloud. You have to saturate the glued parts of the victim with olive oil. Roderick, do we have any? Is there some in the kitchen? Roderick nodded. In the pantry, but it's a big can, brand new, hasn't been opened yet. Could we bite through it? Not tin, no. Unscrew the lid? No. Not even the church ladies can get it open. They always call in the sexton to help, and even he grunts and groans. Lucretia wailed loudly. Help! Help me! Hildegard could see another whisker rip off. Quiet, Lucretia. You got yourself into this. You should never have been in here. I'm going to help you, but you have to keep still. Dumb thing to say. Of course she keeps still. All 4 paws are glued tightly. Hildegard remembered something. It might work. No way to know, but it was the only hope. See that shelf? Hildegard pointed to a high shelf on which stood a glass container decorated with silver filigree. I have to get up there. Shouldn't be too hard, Roderick said. You climb things higher than that all the time. What's in that bottle? Hildegard didn't answer him. She was still thinking. From the place at the foot of the drapery, Lucretia let out another wail of misery. Hildegard ignored that. Roderick, she said, you must go out to the sanctuary. Has anyone arrived yet? He peeked out the door and shook his head. They could still hear Trevor pounding away on the organ in the loft, but there were no other people in the church. Go bite into a cushion, any cushion. Can you do that? Roderick nodded uncertainly. I guess so. Then what? Do I have to eat a cushion? I'm not sure my digestive tract can. No, don't eat it. Pull out some stuffing and drag it back here. Why? Hildegard looked at him impatiently. You'll see. We don't have much time, Roderick. Father Murphy is going to be here any second. Bring back the stuffing. I'll be up on that shelf. Go! Roderick scurried away. And you, be quiet, Hildegard called to Lucretia. Then she jumped to the arm of a chair and from there to the sink counter. She eyed the distance to the shelf. It was still pretty far. She jumped next to a hook on the wall and from there took a deep breath, then leapt to the shelf. There! Now she was where she needed to be. Not a bad leap for an old lady, she thought. She stood erect, held tightly with her paws to the glass bottle, and nudged at the stopper with her nose. The cork moved slightly. She nudged again and again. There! It was out. It bounced once on the shelf and fell to the carpeting. Roderick, she called. He appeared in the doorway, dragging a length of gray cushioned stuffing with his mouth. Still holding it, he looked up at her questioningly. Good, she said. Now I need that up here. Jump first to the arm of the chair. Don't drop the stuffing. He did that and looked up at her again. Now to the sink. It's an easy jump. He made it to the sink. Get a really good grip on the stuffing now, Roderick, because the next one's quite a leap. Looking nervous, Roderick rearranged the position of his teeth a bit. Over and up to that hook, she directed him. You can do it. I did. From the trap on the floor came a small voice. I'm praying for you, Lucretia called. Well, that's a first, thought Hildegard. Go, Roderick. He took a deep breath around the stuffing and jumped to the hook. Now to the shelf, she called to him. He did it and dropped the stuffing by her side. That was scary, he said. And it was scary in the sanctuary with the organ playing. I grabbed a cushion in the first pew and... Later, Roderick. Tell me later. No time now. I need you to wrap my tail with the stuffing. He looked very puzzled, but he followed Hildegard's directions and carefully wound the gray fluffy material around her tail as she held it out to him. Good. Ignatius said to use a Q-tip, but of course we don't have one. This should do. Now stand right here. I'm going to climb you. Roderick leaned against the crystal and silver container, and Hildegard carefully climbed to his shoulders, then placed her rear paws, one by one, on the top of his head. Ouch! can't be helped, she told him. Now hold very still. He did so, and she lifted her cotton-coated tail up and up, then curled it and dipped it into the open top of the container. What's in there? Roderick asked when she brought her tail out dripping. Chrism. Chrism? What's that? As she lowered her tail, he sniffed it. Smells like the pine trees in the cemetery. It's holy oil, she told him. Actually, olive oil scented with balsam. Help me down now. Getting down was slightly easier than getting up had been, even though her tail was heavy with wadded, oily cotton stuffing. Hildegard went first. Holding her tail up so as not to smear the carpeting, she scurried over to where Lucretia waited. Hold my tail so it doesn't touch the glue, Roderick, and then squeeze, she directed him. Little by little, they dabbed the oil on Lucretia's glued parts while she whimpered. Several whiskers were hopelessly lost, but carefully, one by one, they were able to extricate her legs. Finally, only her tail was still stuck to the trap. With one last squeeze of the remaining oil, they moistened it, then tugged. Lucretia howled in pain, but the tail came loose at last, and she toppled onto the carpet. Her fur was torn and mottled, and one paw was bleeding. She was weak and weeping, but she was free. Thank you, she gasped. Go and hide quickly, Hildegard told her. The service will be starting soon. Roderick and I will clean up in here. Lucretia turned and limped heavily toward the door. Then she looked back with gratitude. Hildegard, she said, you're a saint.